Yeah.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, finally bringing you our American Athletic Conference predictions for this upcoming 2020 college football season. As we all know, there's been so much uncertainty over the past few weeks and months in the world of college football, and especially in the world of Group of 5 conferences. And there were so many questions as to whether these conferences were going to play football, and if they did, how are they going to handle scheduling non-conference games with the Big Ten and the Pac-12 both canceling football, and a few Group of 5 members as well also deciding to not play football this season. The American Athletic Conference, though, decided to still play. They decided to play 8 conference games, and their members could play up to 4 non-conference games. That, of course, means that not all 11 members are going to play the same amount of games, guys, as you can see already by this record, or by these records. And, of course, we should all know that while the non-conference games are great and they do boost your win total or maybe make your record look a little bit worse, it's the conference games that matter the most. It's the conference games that matter the most, and it's the conference wins and losses that structure these standings here. So keep that in the back of your head, guys, because the amount of games that these teams play could change in the following days. We're 1 week out from week 1 of the college football season. It begins on Thursday, September 3rd. We wanted to go ahead and start getting these predictions out to you guys, but do keep in mind that some of these games could get canceled for opponents or for teams across the country. These guys could add some non-conference games and have some extra games on their schedule in the future and in the following days. So just keep that in the back of your head, guys. We're doing the best we can with the information that we have, as are you, the fans, dealing with so much uncertainty. But today, let's go ahead and take a look at what we have right now, what we know as of right now within the American Athletic Conference. And you can see that we have Central Florida coming in at number 1 in our conference standings. And that might come as a surprise to some people because I know so many people are high on Cincinnati this year. As you can see, we are too. We have the Bearcats in second, really a tie for first. We have the Knights and the Bearcats both finishing 9-1, 7-1 in conference play. But I give UCF the edge here because Central Florida does get to host Cincinnati. The Knights do host Cincinnati in late November, a game that ultimately could decide really who finishes first in the standings, which to some doesn't mean that much, but for these two teams it does, because we all know that the team with the better record, the team at the top of the standings, gets to host the American Athletic Conference Championship game. So that's going to be a huge, huge game in late November if both of these teams live up to the hype. And you look at the Knights, guys, they're coming off a 10-3 season, disappointing by their standards, at least in recent years, but they're going to bounce back in a big way this year. Dylan Gabriel is back at quarterback. They averaged 43.4 points per game with him at the helm. Keep in mind, he was just a freshman in 2019. He's got a great wide receiver in Trey Nixon. You've got Greg McCray and Otis Anderson at running back. And the defense, guys, get slept on big time, but they only allowed 23 points per game in 2019. Everybody focuses so much on the UCF offense. That defense is extremely, extremely underrated. So we're giving the Knights the edge here, guys. Getting that home game against Cincinnati is key. Right behind them, though, is the Bearcats, 9-1, 7-1 in conference play. Their lone loss to Central Florida. Central Florida's lone loss on the road at Memphis. When you look at Luke Fickell's squad, they're coming off back-to-back 11-win seasons. Back-to-back 11-win seasons for Cincinnati. I am amazed, honestly, that Luke Fickell has yet to take a Power 5 coaching job because he has done a phenomenal job coaching the Bearcats and really building this program up to one of the best in the American Athletic Conference, and also contending for that NY6 Bowl spot that, of course, goes to the highest-ranked Group of 5 conference champion. Cincinnati will certainly be in that discussion this year. They're going to be led by arguably the best defense within the American Athletic Conference. They returned 10 starters on that side of the ball, and they only allowed 20.6 points per game in 2019. Less than 21 points per game they allowed in 2019. Basically, their entire defense returned. Their star quarterback in Desmond Ridder returns, and if he is fully healthy and improves his accuracy just a little bit, he is once again going to be a nightmare for opposing defenses to stop, especially in conference play. And when you look at this, guys, when you look at the standings here, you really have your big four. It's UCF, Memphis, Cincinnati, and SMU. Cincinnati does get to host Memphis, which is huge for them. Huge for them. An American Athletic Conference Championship rematch from last year. And then, as we mentioned, does have to travel down to Orlando to take on the Knights. But there's a very good chance Cincinnati winds up with one loss. They very well could end up undefeated. And by season's end, by the time they make the title game, which we do believe they will make, they will certainly be in the discussion for that Group of 5 conference champion spot in a New Year's 6 bowl game. And the chances really increased, in my opinion, when the Mountain West canceled their season, which eliminated any potential threat of Boise State challenging for that spot as well. We move on down the list here, guys. We have SMU coming in at number 3 in the standings. 9-3 overall, 6-2 in conference play. SMU did a fantastic job in year 2 under Sonny Dykes last year. Went 10-3. That sounds really, really good, and it was a great season. But they started 8-0. The Mustangs started 8-0, which means they finished the season 2-3, including a blowout loss to Florida Atlantic in their bowl game. They averaged 41.8 points per game last year. They are lucky their star quarterback, Shane Buechele, the reason for that offensive resurgence at SMU, he returns this year down in Dallas, and he also returns one of his top wide receivers in Reggie Roberson. The biggest key for Sonny Dykes and SMU this year, if they really want to challenge for that top 2 finish in the American Athletic Conference, if they want to challenge for a New Year's 6 bowl spot, much like they did for the course of 2019, they've got to improve that defense that allowed 33.4 points per game last year. If SMU does not improve defensively, then they're going to lose at least, we have 3, maybe even more games than that. And if they can't improve defensively, they have no shot at getting above UCF or Cincinnati, both of which are going to have very strong defenses in 2020. Moving past SMU, we have Memphis. Memphis, a team that I am very, very excited to watch this year. And a team that I think a lot of people, I wouldn't say have disregarded, but a team that people have concerns about because Mike Norvell has left the Tigers and has now taken the job at Florida State. I'm here to tell you that if you are concerned about that, or if you believe that Memphis is going to see some significant drop-off because Norvell left, I'm here to tell you that's not going to happen. Because Ryan Silverfield, to me, I thought did a fantastic job as interim last year. Had one game in the Cotton Bowl, they lost. But they really gave Penn State a fight in that Cotton Bowl. And Silverfield returned so much talent, especially offensively, with what I like to call the Big Three. The Big Three at Memphis. And of course, that's Brady White at quarterback, Kenneth Gainwell at running back, and DeMonte Coxey at wide receiver. So you have the Big Three at Memphis, an offense that averaged over 40 points per game last year. And something that a lot of people didn't realize, guys, kind of flew under the radar, is that Silverfield made one of the best offseason hires of this past offseason, of 2020. No one really talked much about it, but he's bringing in Mike McIntyre as his defensive coordinator. The former Colorado head coach. He's bounced around a little bit since he left Boulder, but Mike McIntyre, a strong defensive mind, has prior head coaching experience, which is really going to benefit Silverfield in his first year as a head coach. And I think that is a hire that really could improve this Memphis defense. It wasn't all that hot last year, and will certainly have them in contention for that New Year's 6 bowl spot and another American Athletic Conference title. Remember, they did win it last year. So you take a look at that, guys. There's your top 4 teams. We just mentioned them. And there's a tiny little break there. Navy's right behind them at 7-4. But those are the 4 teams to me that are really going to challenge for this American Athletic title in 2020. And they're really just all going to beat up on one another. We have Memphis falling at SMU and at Cincinnati. So I really do believe that with limited fans, home field advantage is going to play a big role in some of these games. It really, really is. And with the American Athletic Conference shaped up the way it is, and with the talent coming back, you can bank on a lot of high-scoring matchups in some of these games, with all 4 of these teams having very dynamic offenses. So that's kind of the major storyline of the American Athletic, but of course we're not here to talk about 4 teams, we're here to talk about 11. We move down right below Memphis. We've got Navy. Navy coming in at 7-4 in our eyes. Now, the biggest key for Navy is they lose their star quarterback in Malcolm Perry. Malcolm Perry had over 2,000 2,000 rushing yards in 2019. 2,000 rushing yards in 2019. And I always hate to see Navy lose a star quarterback because you always think they're going to take a major step back when they lose someone like when you lose someone like a Malcolm Perry or Keenan Reynolds, someone like that. So you look at these Navy quarterbacks, guys, and you can't help but wonder who's going to fill in for Perry. Who's going to fill in for him? And it's another Perry Olsen. Perry Olsen should be the front runner to take over the quarterback position for Navy. And the good thing for the midshipmen always is they're not going to be throwing the ball that much. They're, of course, going to be running it. That ground and pound offense, that option offense that everybody knows is coming, but yet can't figure out how to stop. They went from 3 wins in 2018 to 11 wins in 2019. Navy will take a step back in 2020. But they still, to me, will finish with a winning record regardless of what happens in their bowl game. 5-3 in conference play. The midshipmen continue to do a great job in a conference. Just a few years ago, moving to the American Athletic Conference, and to me, still doing extremely well. Right below Navy, we have Houston. Houston, and then once again, that's where you see a significant drop-off, a 2-game difference in the conference records between Navy and the Cougars. And you look at Houston here, guys. Dana Holgorsen was just given a horrible, horrible hand in year 1 back with the Cougars. I mean, you couldn't have asked for a worse season if you're Dana Holgorsen. I think a lot of people had high expectations for him making his return to Houston, especially with a strong quarterback in De'Aaron King. Well, then after a slow start, De'Aaron King decided to redshirt. He now, of course, is at Miami, and the Cougars went on to finish 4-8. But with King going out, with him choosing to sit out, they were able to usher in Clayton Tune, who had plenty of playing experience last year at quarterback. And I think that was huge in the production and the development of Tune, because if King had played the entire year and Tune was getting thrust into the role now, without off-season practice and without spring practice and all that, he would have been in a rough situation. He truly would have been. But Tune had solid game experience. Solid game experience despite the poor record. He now returns one of the top wide receiver cores within the conference, led by Marquez Stevenson. Houston returned 7 starters on the defensive side of the ball. Like SMU, they've drastically got to improve on that side of the ball after allowing 34 points per game. But I do think Dana Holgorsen turns the ship around here. 4-8 last year. Yes, we have them at 5-6 this year and just 3-5 in conference play. Keep in mind, though, you add in 1 extra non-conference game, that might have just been enough to get the Cougars to the postseason. And this record alone right here might still be good enough to get Holgorsen and his squad to the postseason as well. I can promise you that sooner rather than later, Houston is going to be back in American Athletic Conference title contention, much like they were just a few years ago under Tom Herman. Following Houston, we have Temple. And as you can see, we don't even have anything in parentheses there because Temple currently doesn't have any non-conference games scheduled. They currently have 8 conference games scheduled just like everybody else, and that's it. So we have the Owls finishing 3-5. The thing is, they lose a lot defensively, guys. Now, Rod Carey usually has a pretty strong defense, so I don't want to dog on him too much. They lose their star All-American defensive end in Quincy Roche, who joins De'Aaron King down at Miami. Only 4 starters are back on the defensive side of the ball, and while Temple does have a very strong quarterback in Anthony Russo, who threw for 21 touchdowns and nearly 3,000 yards last year, their offense has never really been that electric, never been one to light you up, and it's certainly not one, to me, that can keep up in a shootout. So if the defense struggles early on this season, is the offense going to be enough to bail them out, especially against some of the more elite opponents within the conference? I don't think it is. We've got them at 3-5. Keep in mind, though, guys, that some of these records, again, are very misleading. 3-5 for the Owls here. You throw in 4 non-conference games. They win 3, they're at 500. They're going bowling. They win all 4, they're 7-5. So you kind of have to take some of these records with a grain of salt here. But in the end, I do think that the Owls would have finished 3-5 in conference play. How they would have fared in the non-conference, hopefully we will get to find out. You move into your final 4 here, guys, kind of the cellar dwellers of the American Athletic Conference. We'll start with South Florida, who has hired former Clemson offensive coordinator Jeff Scott to become their brand new head coach. Now, South Florida was a very disappointing team last year. They had a horrible finish to 2018 and then had a really pitiful 2019 as well. So hopefully Jeff Scott can come in here and kind of rejuvenate this Bulls squad that was pretty solid just a few years ago, especially when they had Quentin Flowers at quarterback. They now have a quarterback controversy of their own. Are they going to go with Cade Fortin, the transfer quarterback from North Carolina, or are they going to stick with Jordan McLeod, who had over 1,400 yards and 12 touchdowns last year, but also threw 8 interceptions as well? McLeod really wasn't all that impressive, mediocre at best. That's going to be the key for the Bulls this year, of whether or not they can surprise in Jeff Scott's first year, or whether they just try to play through every game, go through the motions, and then really try to take off next year when hopefully things are back to normal. Right below South Florida, we've got East Carolina and my man, Destry Sparks. Hope you're paying attention because you have opened my eyes to a lot of things within this Pirates football program. And of course, one of them is how great of a coach Mike Houston is. Mike Houston, of course, last year was his first year at the FBS level. He was hired away from FCS powerhouse James Madison. And he led the Pirates to a 4-8 record. I would have expected ECU to take a step forward, if not stay around the same record, if we had played a full 12-game season and everything had been normal. But of course, that just unfortunately is not the case. We've got the Pirates clocking in at 3-7, but winning 2 conference games after only winning 1 last year. And you look at this, guys, while they went 4-8, they held their own against some of the best opponents within the conference last year. They fell by 13 points to Central Florida. They only fell by 3 points to Cincinnati. And they only fell by 8 points, 59-51, against SMU. They've got a great young quarterback in Holton Ahlers, over 3,300 yards and 21 touchdowns last year. They landed a solid running back transfer from Arkansas and Chase Hayden, and Houston is racking up the transfers on the defensive side of the ball to the point where I think East Carolina could be going bowling as soon as next season. Right below East Carolina, rounding out the American Athletic Conference, we have Tulsa coming in at 2-8. They went 4-8 last year, guys. 4-8 last year for Philip Montgomery and the Golden Hurricane. But keep in mind that 5 of their 8 losses, guys, came by 12 points or less. That included a triple overtime loss to SMU, who, yes, did win 10 games last year, but had some major scares along the way, and also had a 1-point loss to Memphis. So, kind of like East Carolina here, Tulsa did hold their own. Problem for Tulsa, along with many of these other programs as well within the AAC, is their defense, I think, is going to struggle mightily. They lose 7 of their top 13 tacklers from last year. They only returned 1 starter in their secondary. They allowed 31.3 points per game last year, and their pass rush was practically non-existent as they only racked up 14 sacks on the year. So while Philip Montgomery, known for his offense, a guy with a quarterback in Zach Smith that I think will lead the offense to improvement, it's all going to be for naught if the defense can't step it up. Regardless, even if we had played full 12 games, I wouldn't think Tulsa would go bowling. They might flirt with it, maybe between 4 to 5 wins, 1 upset away from getting to the postseason. But for now, we're going to keep them towards the bottom of the standings. And then finally, we have Tulane rounding out the American Athletic Conference. And I think that's probably the biggest surprise out of these teams. How can you have Tulane last? Well, if you look at the overall record, they technically have 1 extra win than Tulsa. So 3-8 versus 2-8. But when you look at the conference record, Tulane we have at 1-7. How do we have them at last? Well, let's think about this. Tulane won 6 games in 2018. They won 6 games in 2019. Won their bowl game both times. They're coming off back-to-back bowl victories. They're coming off back-to-back 7-win seasons. So Willie Fritz is doing a phenomenal job down in New Orleans. But they now lose their star quarterback in Justin McMillan. They also lose their star running back in Corey Dauphine to a torn Achilles. So you basically lost your biggest playmakers on offense. And we knew Tulane was going to be very run-heavy. Keep in mind, McMillan was dual threat as well. So a lot of changes on the offense for Tulane, a lot of uncertainty on the offense for Tulane, not to mention how brutal their schedule is. They have a road game at Southern Miss, at Houston, at Central Florida, and then they do host SMU and Memphis, but I don't think their offense, which I do think will struggle, I don't think their offense can keep up against some of these high-octane offenses such as SMU and Memphis. If it becomes a shootout, it's not going to benefit Tulane here. Let's say that the Green Wave lose all 5 of those games. Let's just say that those were all at the beginning. They're 0-5. They now have 6 games remaining. I can promise you Tulane would win all 6 of those. So out of those final 6, we have Tulane splitting them, going 3-3, resulting in a 3-8 final record. I know it's extremely disappointing, might be a major shock for some, but I think this is a major rebuilding year for Willie Fritz, and just a really unfortunate year for Willie Fritz. You're dealing with COVID, but you're also dealing with injuries and departures. Some of those things you just can't help as a coach. So you look at this, guys, our standings for the American Athletic Conference going into 2020. We rounded out with the projected title game. Cincinnati at Central Florida. Cincinnati at Central Florida. Remember last year, Cincinnati defeated Central Florida in Cincinnati at Nippert Stadium. They won that game. This year, the Bearcats have to travel to Orlando in the regular season, right at the end of November. And I'm picking for some deja vu to happen for the Bearcats. If you recall last year, the Bearcats faced off against Memphis in the season finale and lost. The very next week, they played Memphis again in the title game and lost. Cincinnati plays Central Florida, I believe, in the second to last week of the season. We have them losing that game. A few weeks later, they will once again make the return trip to Orlando, where they will face the Knights again, and for the second time this season, they will fall to the Knights. We've got Josh Heupel and UCF winning the American Athletic Conference in 2020, finishing with a 10-1 record and almost guaranteeing them spot in a NY6 Bowl Game after taking 1 year off in 2019. A lot of people don't want to hear it. A lot of people are tired of this UCF success, but I really, truly don't see it stopping anytime soon. So guys, there you have it, our projected American Athletic Conference records and predictions for this upcoming 2020 college football season. Remember, some of these games could change in the following days or weeks or as the season goes on. Some games could be added, some games could be taken away, but since we are 1 week out, we wanted to get these out to you as soon as possible, and we felt this was the closest time to do so. We're working with what we've got, and we're thrilled with it as of now. So guys, as always, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, and share our videos. And also make sure to check out everything down in the description below, where you can follow us on our social media pages over on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And also visit our new website, thegridironexpert.com, where you can support us on our Patreon account, support us through our newsletter, and also support us through our expert picks. A lot of those things are going to be picking up when the season starts next week. So as always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.